All right, welcome to Lecture 5, Behavior Activation. My name is Landon Barrowman. This is a Triskel production. So if you've got your copy of the Working Man's Guide to Mental Health right in front of you, you're going to see behavior activation is a huge part of it. It's under the doing section. I've divided the CBT triangle in this book into 3 parts: thinking, doing, and feeling. So thinking is your cognitive side, which was lecture 2 and 3. Doing is your behavioral side, that's this section. And feeling, or somatic quieting, is coming up in the later lectures. This lecture is the second part of the doing phase. So if you haven't listened to lecture 4, stop right now, go back. That lecture is all about behavior monitoring, and this part won't really work without it. Okay, so now that we've got that figured out, we're gonna get into behavior activation. So what is it? Basically, behavior activation is something so simple. You're finding out all those bad parts of your week that are really messing up, and we're replacing them with good parts. We're taking all the good things that we like to do and peppering them throughout our week. So if you've been doing your daily records, you've been rating your days and noticing trends. So we're going to take all that data and start changing your life. We're going to insert these new behaviors and see how they affect your happiness. If something you try kind of lifts you up even a little bit, you get more of it. If it makes you feel good and it's not hurting anybody, then it's the kind of stuff that you're going to want more of. So let's talk about the 5 categories of behavioral activation. We'll start with number 1, structured exercise. So this could be anything, sports, gym workouts, cardio, stretching, anything that gets your heart rate going and your body moving. Having an elevated heart rate, even for short periods of time, helps with your blood pressure, your lungs, and so many other parts of your body. I really recommend it, even if you're just running for short jogs. Listen, I'm turning 40, and maybe by the time this series gets big, I'll be even older. But staying active, it saves you from all kinds of creeping health issues. You don't even know what you're avoiding, because if you're preventing injuries and easing pain, you're way ahead of the game. I knew a guy in his late 70s. He was missing a leg. And he's a bodybuilder and a runner, and he was healthy as hell. Pancreatic cancer eventually got him, but man, he lived happy and strong all the way through because he prioritized his fitness. So on this page in your book, you've got a huge list of structured exercises. Just pick one, just one, and throw it into your schedule and go do it. If it's something you've never tried, even better. You might surprise yourself. You don't have a gym? Go up and down the stairs. Do push-ups on the floor. Do burpees. Do a prison workout. I know a guy who used a push-up board and lost 100 pounds in a year. Shout out to Gord Larson. What a legend. He just wanted to get better, and he did. This stuff works. You're inserting what scientists will call an independent variable. You're choosing the action and seeing how it changes your results. If it works, awesome. Do more of it. If it doesn't, scrap it. There's no harm done there. At least you tried something. I know there's a million things on that list, but if you try going through it and crossing off some of them, you never know. You might discover that you like horseback riding or something. And hey, nothing wrong with that. It can make for some pretty badass dates, especially if chicks are into that whole Yellowstone thing. So this is what we call behavior activation. This is where it starts to change your life. So I know I got ahead of myself earlier there. I didn't really mention all the other parts of behavioral activation. So let's run them down real quick. We got mindfulness and relaxation, valued activities and social connectedness, and finally, you got goal setting and graded exposure. So these are the ones that we're going to be exploring a little more. And like I said before, the best way to do this is to start penciling them into your schedule before the day happens. So you want to pepper your week with these good behaviors. That way, when you hit those days, you're already setting yourself up for success. You're saying, okay, 1 o'clock, I'm going to go horseback riding, or, at 3 o'clock, I'm going to sit down and read or try meditation. You know what I discovered? That I love checklists. I already mentioned this to you guys in a further lecture. I don't know what it is. If I put a box beside something, I'm getting it done, just so I can check it off. You're going to discover stuff like that about yourself too. You're going to learn how to motivate your own self. When you want to do something but don't, that's where you really start learning about yourself. Every single therapeutic method, every system I've ever come across, it's always about learning about yourself. So what are you hiding from yourself? What are you denying? What are you avoiding? What do you like? What don't you like? What makes you happy? What makes you sad? This is what we're learning here. So this next one, we're going to uncover all of that. It's mindfulness. Mindfulness activities aren't as intense as the structured exercises we were talking about before, but we're talking about things like reading, light walks, meditation, or just setting aside some time to reflect. Going for a nice quiet walk is practicing mindfulness. You're just sitting with your thoughts and they're going. You can learn to slow that down and really understand what's happening in your own head. Hell, even staring out a window can be mindfulness practice. But here's the thing. We're always plugged in. Phones, screens, noise, and our lives, they've become void of silence. We've grown afraid of boredom. Boredom is actually one of the best gifts that you can give your mind. People have written entire books about getting bored again, just because that's where you meet yourself. You want to know when to use your thought records? It's right here on those quiet walks, in those silent drives, during those unhurried mornings. That's when you can really start to notice your automatic thoughts. You can start naming them and start working them out. It doesn't always have to be on paper. That's the therapy. That's the practice. That's where your healing starts. And if you're religious, you know this already. Mindfulness is a huge part of prayer. It's those quiet moments that you're just with God, in the presence of Him. If you're not religious, same effects happens when you're watching a fire or sitting under a sunset or just out camping, looking at the stars. You've probably had that moment where everything's still, everything's quiet, it's filled with wonder, and there's nothing to do but reflect on your life and the things that have happened. So that's mindfulness. And while we're here, let me just tell you how powerful gratitude is. You can make lists of gratitude that are just, they'll blow you away. At the end of the day, you can write down 3 things that you're grateful for, and then ask yourself, why did this happen? What does it mean? And how can I get more of it? I swear, you do that for 2 weeks, and I promise you, your life will change. You'll start appreciating what you already have, and that will make room for even more. And it's not magic. That's literally just rewiring your brain, just to see the good. These are all parts of relaxation and mindfulness toolkit. You don't need anything fancy. Just go sit in a deprivation tank or go listen to some chill music and drive or go for a walk with your kid, That's all it takes. This is about taking time that's yours. Time that isn't stolen by social media or TV or all your bad habits. You put it in your calendar, in your activity charts, and you do it. Suddenly, you're back in the driver's seat. You're controlling your life. You're the one taking care of you now, and that's how it should be. So up next, we're going to talk about valued activities. And I put this one in together with social connectedness because I believe, and in my life, they're very, very much the same things. Of course, they can be different. Some hobbies are totally solo, but bringing them into a social space can make them even better. In one of my groups, I met this older guy who was really into model painting. So I paint miniatures too, right? Warhammer, D&D, that sort of thing. I 3D print models and paint them up, It's quite focused and honestly pretty meditative, That's a valued activity of mine, but it was a great way that I could connect with him. A great way to find your own valued activities, is to think back to your childhood even. Things that you really loved doing as a kid. Go back to those things and explore them. You might value them more than you think, and you just haven't done them in so long. If one of your best memories is your dad taking you to K-Days, pencil that in. Maybe you should take your kids to K-Days. Even if you hate crowds, like I do, you can still make it meaningful. Sometimes you just have to do things. And that's where a tool like activity monitoring comes in. So here's a great tool that I use when forced to do something that might seem a little bit shitty, to put it bluntly. It's just called activity monitoring. And what you do is before you go into any kind of situation, you make a guess, and you rate it out of 1 out of 10, right? You go, is this going to be a 1 event where it's completely awful, or is it going to be a 3? What do I think is going to happen, So if you're expecting it to be a 3 out of 10, and then afterwards you come back and re-rate it and see it. Was it really a 3, or was it better than I expected? A lot of times we're going to ruin things before they even happen with our expectation. So that's the trick. Remember before what I said? Manage your expectations. This is an actual method of doing that, of seeing that your expectations are ruining a lot of your experiences. That's a core idea in CBT. Don't let dread shape the outcome before you even tried. And that goes for social stuff too. Maybe you feel disconnected. That's okay. Go find your people. Try volunteering or joining a club, maybe a recreational league or community meetups, car shows, anything. And if you do have old friends, don't forget about them. I've had the same friends for like 20 years. We always say, nothing's changed. But one time I saw a meme, it was a chart of how little time we actually spend together. And it hit me. I don't call them enough. I don't invite them over. I don't see them in my week. Meanwhile, I'm surrounded by strangers all day. Look beside you. That guy in the lunchroom, you probably spend more time with that guy than your own family. And in places like the oil sands, your crew becomes your family. So when you're home, honor the time you have that you can spend with your friends. Make space for the people you love and do things that bring you joy. Valued activities and social connection are essential. So go for a boys' night out, call a buddy, catch a movie, take a fitness class together, or, if you're all musicians like we are, jam. Go watch some live music or have a bonfire. Hell, write someone a letter. Yes, a letter. One thing I like to do is I collect old postcards and I send them to people. When they get them, they totally flip out. It's like, something from Back to the Future or something. They're getting some blast from the past. Who the fuck does that, right? It's just a little quirky thing. I bet there's lots of cool, quirky shit that you could do in your life that would make you feel better. So make time for the things that you value and bring people into them. You can start small, On Monday, schedule some structured exercise. Tuesday, do something relaxing. Wednesday, a social or valued activity. See how your mood shifts. And with you tracking your mood already, you can check the data. Did your 5 turn into a 6 just because you hung out with someone? It works for me. And hey, you're not going to get worse trying something new. You ever seen Yes Man? That whole movie's about saying yes to life and watching it change. You might be surprised by what happens when you just say yes and you do shit. All right, let's talk about the last part in behavior activation: goal setting and graded exposure. So these are super important in our lives. There's a lot of old habits, patterns, and frankly, some baggage that we need to drop. When you're entering a phase of real change, you don't just want to add good habits. You got to let go of all that junk that's been weighing you down too. That's where SMART goals come in. SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So instead of saying, I want to quit smoking, you say, I want to cut down to half a pack a day this week. That's specific and measurable. Is it achievable? Maybe you decide that you need to start smaller. You can't go down to half a pack a day. You can dial it up or dial it back however you need. Is cutting down just a few cigarettes a day relevant? Absolutely, especially if your health is already being affected. Is it time-bound? Well, you said this week. Same thing goes for drinking. Energy drinks or pop, they're both kind of shit for you. So let's say you spend $5 a day on energy drinks. Challenge yourself. This is all I get for energy drinks this week. And you track it, see if it works. That could be a SMART goal. You find that SMART goals make almost anything feel doable, and they help you chip away at the old patterns in a way that's sustainable. A quick little tip for SMART goals, or anything you're really doing. If something seems too big to take on all at once, There's a real cool tip I use called task chopping. Take that task and chop it into smaller parts. Then see what that looks like and start taking those smaller parts on instead of the whole thing at once. Now, let's talk about graded exposure, because this is a game changer. Graded exposure means you don't dive in head first. You ease yourself into a new habit or challenge. So say you start wanting to go to the gym. You don't force yourself to crush an hour workout on day one. Maybe the first step is just getting there. This is a lot like task chopping. You literally just walk in and do a 2-minute walk on the treadmill. Maybe what you're actually doing is just buying some new gym shoes. Maybe that's the first step that you put on your little task chop. The win isn't the workout, it's showing up. I did this myself when I worked up north. I made myself a deal. I'm just going to go to the gym to show up. The rest, that's a bonus. Even The Rock says that the hardest part of going to the gym can be getting your shoes on in the morning. And look at that guy. He's built like a friggin' brick shithouse. So if it's hard for him, it's okay if it's hard for you. That first step is what counts, so give yourself credit for that. Now, some days you're not going to want to go do the thing, and that's fine. It's more important to keep momentum than to be perfect. If the gym isn't calling you that day, swap it out for something else that's more meaningful. Just don't derail. The whole process is about understanding what motivates you and what blocks you and what helps you stay on track. So you're going to learn how to move through resistance and to pivot when you need to, and to show up for yourself in a flexible, forgiving way. Even if you put a couple of these activities in your week plan, your life will start to change. It will. You'll start noticing patterns, successes, and even, yes, setbacks, and you'll adjust accordingly. That's the beauty of this whole system. So with lectures 4 and 5 combined, you now understand how behavior can affect your mindset and affect your mood. You're learning to take control of your mental health by changing what you do. So what you do, who you see, what you put into your day, it all makes a difference. And now you're tracking your mood, testing new habits, slowly removing the stuff that was dragging you down. If something doesn't work, scrap it. But if something does work, like meeting your buddies or going for a walk or going to that truck meet, keep it up. Do more of it. That's the point. You're building a life that actually feeds you, a life that makes you feel proud and that connects you with others. That helps you stay strong even when things get hard. Thanks for being here. That wraps up this lecture on goal setting and graded exposure and all this behavior activation. I hope some of it got to you. I hope some of it, you really absorbed it. And if not, give it a few more listens. It's up here for you to use as many times as you need. Don't think that this is all going to happen because you listened to this once and you went through the book. It's a working thing. You need to work at it. I'm Landon Barrowman. This is a Triskel production, and I'll see you in the next lecture.